Can you give us a short synopsis of how media companies can drive engagement with a good data strategy?
Sure. I think one of the things that you want to do is know who your audience is and how you can have conversations. So if you're looking at data about what people are talking about on social, what they're reading on your site, and then what they're doing in the community, and you can meet them in the conversation where they are, that's a nice way to have an engagement strategy that's focused around data.
And what advice would you give to media companies as they look to engage and increase their audience through data strategies?
Well, you always want to look at who the audience you have and what are other similar audiences based on the either behavioral or the demographic data that you've got, and look at kind of see who else you might be able to acquire and attract some interest to.
And what are the biggest challenges to media companies doing this right now?
Well, it sounds like the biggest challenge from what I've been hearing and from what I see is all the different buckets and silos that we keep our data in, and be able to make sure that a person that we have in one database is the same person that we see in another database, and so you can build some sort of knowledge about what they're interested in.
And how are media companies using data to engage their audiences through social media?
Boy, that's a really a tough question. So looking at the data that you have on your site, and then understanding at what times to engage on social media and the different social media platforms. A lot of times you see folks look at social data and think it's sort of the same audience behavior across all the platforms, but you need to understand it's really important that different types of people engage with different information at different times of day on different platforms. And so no longer can you give sort of one product to one group of people in one place. You've got to think about reaching them all over the place.
How has your media company engaged audiences through a good audience data strategy?
Well, we've just begun digitizing our newsroom, in particular with Parsley, which is a great tool for gauging trends and patterns on kind of real-time consumption of our news and information. So it's been a great tool. We're maybe, I think, 20 properties into the use of Parsley. I think the interesting part is it does give our newsroom and editors real-time actionable data to drive deeper news interests and engagement based on what the patterns are in the market at that very specific time. It's real-time. It's a great tool. I think the next step of engagement, though, is going to be on the individual level. And we're just beginning to use web listening tools to start to see individual patterns of interest. And I think that's the next frontier for Gatehouse in the industry, is going to be stuff that's specific to an individual. The challenge, I think, is where do you house all that? How do you keep it in a spot that's accessible and usable on a real-time basis? And I think we're beginning to look at, through conferences like this, tools and vendors that can supply us the techniques and the resources to do that kind of a thing.
So in your experience, what are the biggest challenges to creating and using good audience data?
Just that is accessibility, real-time use. I think it's also a skill set issue in the industry. We've tended to come from reporters and editors who clearly doing the right thing in terms of writing what they feel the market needs to know, and not necessarily listening on a day-to-day, real-time basis, kind of what's of interest, what's trending, where are the patterns. And I think that's a change of philosophy, a change of culture that I think is going to be a pretty interesting transition in most newsrooms. I think it's happening to some extent, but it's going to be a good couple, 3-4 years before I think it's fully embedded and ingrained in a typical newsroom.
How important do you think audience data strategies are as a whole for the industry? Are they crucial? Or?
Imperative, absolutely imperative. I think if we don't listen to our customers on that level, well, it's a couple things. One is just a point of interest, relevance, engagement. I'm on the consumer side, and I just think we will not keep these subscribers if, and just general audience, forget about even paid, if we don't have that kind of relevance and connection. as important is what we can do with it on the ad side. So if we do have that position and we have that spot for the consumer and that connection with the consumer, it becomes that much more sellable and targeted for advertisers. So I think, on all levels, whether it's simply capturing eyeball to, in fact, getting paid to do that, it's our survival.
How has your media company engaged audiences through a good audience data strategy?
Well, I think that's something we're still trying to figure out. We're right now in the phase of collecting a lot of data and thinking about how we can apply that data, in terms of advertising. I work on the content side, and so, that's what I'm really excited to hear about today, is how we can apply this data that we're already using for some of our targeted ads and programmatic buying. How can we use that data for some content recommendations and personalization of content?
In your experience, what are the biggest challenges to creating and using good audience data?
I think there are a lot of technical challenges to it. People make it sound like it's really easy to there's all this data floating around on the internet. But in truth, there are a lot of different companies collecting a lot of different kinds of data. And I think the biggest challenge is, figuring out what data you want to collect, what data is important to your advertisers, what data is important to you internally, what data is important in terms of content recommendations, and then making connections between those different types of data to create a really complete picture of what you're trying to understand about your audience.
How important do you think audience data strategies are as a whole for the industry?
So, I think it's hugely important. It's why we're here. Our business model is no longer about reach, about how far we can reach with our content. For many years it was about designing content, designing advertising strategies around reaching the most number of people, and now it's really about building quality audience and building community. There's so many choices out there for consumers right now and advertisers. So the way we can differentiate ourselves is really building a quality audience that's really connected, and data helps us do that.